The coffee cup slipped from Maria's fingers, shattering against the marble floor of Esperanza with a sound that seemed to echo through her very soul. Pretty enough, I suppose, but so common. Works as a waitress, can you believe it? Of course, he doesn't know I know about her little inheritance. 22 million from her grandmother's estate, can you imagine? The boy always was clever about money. Vivian Blackwood's cultured voice dripped with disdain as she continued her conversation with her longtime friend Patricia Worthington. Neither woman had bothered to lower their voices in the exclusive private dining room of what they assumed was just another upscale restaurant. They had no idea that the common waitress they were discussing with such casual cruelty was not only within earshot but owned every elegant fixture, every piece of imported marble, every crystal chandelier that cast dancing shadows across their botoxed faces. Maria Vasquez had built Esperanza from nothing. The name meant hope in Spanish, a tribute to her late grandmother who had scraped together every penny to send Maria to culinary school. What Vivian didn't know, what Brett himself didn't know, was that the inheritance was just the beginning. Maria's restaurant empire now stretched across 3 states, each establishment bearing her grandmother's name and legacy. She was worth far more than 22 million, but she'd never felt the need to flaunt her success. Until now. Now, as she listened to her future mother-in-law describe her son's calculated courtship, Maria felt something cold and sharp unfurl in her chest. The woman who had refused every invitation to meet her, who had cited scheduling conflicts for their engagement party, who had been mysteriously unavailable for dress fittings and venue visits, was finally revealing her true colors. The wedding is next month, you know. Brett says she's insisted on some dreadful little venue. Probably the church basement where she grew up, Vivian continued, her laugh like breaking glass. But once they're married, once he has access to her accounts, well, let's just say he won't need to pretend to love her much longer. A year, maybe 2, and then a quiet divorce. She'll never see it coming. Maria's hands clenched into fists, her perfectly manicured nails digging crescents into her palms. She thought of Brett, gorgeous, charming Brett with his Harvard MBA and his easy smile. Brett, who had swept her off her feet 6 months ago when he'd accidentally bumped into her at the farmer's market where she was selecting ingredients for that night's special menu. Brett, who had courted her with old-fashioned romance, bringing flowers, writing poetry, talking about their future together with such convincing passion. It had all been a lie. But as Maria stood there, feeling her world crumble around her, something else began to take shape in the wreckage of her trust. A plan. Cold, calculated, and perfectly suited to the elegant woman who had built a culinary empire through sheer determination and flawless execution. If Vivian Blackwood thought she was dealing with some naive waitress, she was about to learn exactly how wrong she could be. Maria straightened her black pencil skirt. Valentino, though she doubted Vivienne would recognize quality when she saw it, and smoothed her hair back into its professional chignon. She picked up the shattered pieces of the coffee cup with steady hands, her mind already working through the intricate details of what would become her masterpiece of revenge. 3 weeks. She had 3 weeks until the wedding to orchestrate the downfall of both Brett and his calculating mother. 3 weeks to show them exactly what happened when you underestimated Maria Vasquez. The game was on. The first phase of Maria's plan began that very evening. She called Brett, letting just the right amount of excitement bubble into her voice as she told him about the wonderful surprise she had planned. A private dinner party, darling. Tomorrow night at Esperanza. I finally convinced your mother to meet me. Isn't that amazing? She called this afternoon and said she was ready to welcome me into the family properly. Brett's hesitation was barely perceptible, but Maria caught it. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Mom can be a bit particular about restaurants, though. Maybe we should go somewhere she's more familiar with? Oh no, I insist. I've already spoken with the owner. She's agreed to close the private dining room just for us. It'll be perfect, just the 3 of us getting to know each other. Maria could practically hear the calculations running through Brett's head. The private dining room at Esperanza was notoriously expensive, easily $1,000 for an evening. His fiancé spending that kind of money so carelessly would only confirm his mother's assessment of her as an easy mark. If you're sure, darling, Mom will appreciate the gesture, As if Maria were some desperate girl trying to buy her way into their approval. The next evening, Maria arrived at her own restaurant 2 hours early, personally overseeing every detail. She had dismissed her usual staff for the evening, keeping only her most trusted employees, people who had been with her since the beginning, and knew the truth about who she really was. She chose her outfit carefully, a simple black dress that hugged her curves without being ostentatious, pearls that had belonged to her grandmother, and her grandmother's antique cameo ring. To the untrained eye, she looked like exactly what Vivian expected, a working-class girl trying too hard to impress. Only Maria knew that the dress was a one-of-a-kind piece from a renowned designer. The pearls were worth more than most people's cars, and the cameo had been appraised at auction value of $40,000. When Brett arrived with his mother, Maria felt a familiar surge of attraction despite everything she now knew. He was undeniably handsome, tall and lean with dark hair and the kind of smile that had made her believe in fairy tales again. But now she could see the calculation behind his warm brown eyes, the way he assessed her appearance and the restaurant's decor with the cold evaluation of an appraiser. Vivian Blackwood was exactly what Maria had expected, silver-haired, elegantly dressed, and radiating the kind of casual superiority that came from generations of inherited wealth. She looked around the restaurant with barely concealed disdain, no doubt cataloging what she saw as nouveau riche excess. "Maria, darling," Brett kissed her cheek, his hand lingering possessively on her waist. "You look beautiful. Mom, meet my gorgeous fiancé." Vivian extended a gloved hand with the enthusiasm of someone handling a dead fish. "How nice to finally meet you, dear. Brett has told me so much about you." The lies came so easily to both of them, Maria marveled. She smiled warmly, playing her part to perfection. "Mrs. Blackwood, I can't tell you how thrilled I am that you're here. I've been so nervous about meeting you. Brett speaks of you constantly." They were seated at the best table in the private dining room, with its view of the restaurant's award-winning garden and the city lights beyond. Maria had personally designed the menu for the evening, a progression of dishes that would showcase not just her restaurant's capabilities, but her own culinary expertise. As the first course arrived, a delicate amuse-bouche of foie gras and fig compote, Maria watched Vivian's expression shift from polite disinterest to genuine surprise. "This is quite good," the older woman admitted reluctantly. "Oh, I can't take any credit," Maria said with practiced humility. "The chef here is supposed to be incredible. I just told them we needed something special for such an important evening." Brett reached over to squeeze her hand. "My Maria always goes overboard. I keep telling her she doesn't need to try so hard to impress people." The condescension in his voice was like a blade between Maria's ribs, but she smiled sweetly and squeezed back. "I just want everything to be perfect for the people I love." As the evening progressed through 7 expertly crafted courses, Maria began to weave her web. She spoke of her humble background, her job serving tables, her simple dreams of a quiet life with Brett. She watched Vivian's confidence grow with each carefully chosen phrase, each deliberate display of supposed naivety about money and social status. "You know, dear," Vivian said during the cheese course, her third glass of wine having loosened her tongue considerably, "Brett tells me you've come into some family money recently. How fortunate." Maria's pulse quickened, but her voice remained steady. "Oh yes, my grandmother left me a little something. I'm not really sure about all the details, lawyers and numbers and such, you know how it is. Brett has been so helpful, offering to help me manage it all after we're married." She felt Brett's hand tighten on hers, saw the satisfied gleam in Vivian's eyes. "How practical of him," Vivian murmured. "Men are so much better with these things, don't you think? A woman needs guidance with important financial decisions." "Absolutely," Maria agreed, letting a note of genuine gratitude creep into her voice. "I'm just so lucky to have found someone like Brett. I mean, what are the odds? A successful man like him falling for a simple girl like me?" She was laying it on thick now, but they were eating it up. Brett practically preened under her admiration, and Vivian's smile grew more genuine by the minute. As they finished the final course, a deconstructed tres leches cake that was Maria's signature dessert, Vivian leaned back in her chair with the satisfaction of someone who had just confirmed her worst suspicions. "Well, my dear, this has been illuminating. I must say, you're quite different from what I expected." "I hope that's a good thing?" Maria asked, with just the right amount of uncertainty. "Oh yes," Vivian's smile was sharp as a knife. "Very good indeed." As they prepared to leave, Maria played her final card for the evening. "Before you go, I have something special for you both." She gestured to her sommelier, who appeared with a bottle of wine in an elegant presentation box. "This is a 1982 Bordeaux," Maria explained. "I know it's expensive, but I wanted to give you something really special to celebrate our new family bond." What she didn't mention was that the bottle was worth $12,000, or that she owned the vineyard that had produced it. Vivienne accepted the gift with barely concealed glee, no doubt already calculating how much she could sell it for. Brett kissed Maria deeply, his hands roaming just a bit too familiarly for public display. "You're incredible," he whispered against her ear. "I can't wait to marry you." The sincerity in his voice almost made her believe him. Almost. As they left, Maria stood in the doorway of her restaurant, watching the taillights of Brett's BMW disappear into the night. Tomorrow, phase 2 would begin. Over the next 2 weeks, Maria threw herself into wedding preparations with the enthusiasm of a woman truly in love. She scheduled dress fittings, tasted cakes, selected flowers, all while carefully documenting every expense and every conversation with Brett about their future together. She also began implementing the more sophisticated elements of her plan. Through her network of business contacts, Maria had Brett's finances thoroughly investigated. What she discovered was both fascinating and damning. He was indeed successful on paper. His investment firm was thriving, his client list was impressive, and his portfolio looked robust. But dig deeper, as Maria's private investigator had done, and a different picture emerged. Brett Blackwood was leveraged to his eyeballs. His success was built on borrowed money, risky investments, and the kind of financial house of cards that could collapse at the first strong wind. He needed Maria's inheritance not just for greed, but for survival. His mother's lifestyle was equally precarious. The Blackwood family fortune had been squandered by previous generations, leaving them with the trappings of wealth but none of the substance. They weren't just gold diggers. They were desperate. This knowledge should have made Maria feel vindicated, but instead it filled her with a cold fury that burned hotter than simple betrayal. They weren't just planning to use her, they were planning to destroy her in the process. A year or two of marriage, drain her accounts, then discard her like yesterday's news. Maria had built everything she had through her own sweat and tears. She had honored her grandmother's memory, created jobs for hundreds of people, brought joy to thousands through her culinary artistry. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. Phase 2 involved a carefully orchestrated campaign of misdirection. Maria began making impulsive purchases, expensive jewelry, designer clothes, a new car. She made sure Brett saw the bills, made sure he knew about each frivolous expense. She played the part of a woman drunk on newfound wealth, spending without thought or care. She also began confiding in him about her concerns regarding the restaurant business. She spoke of wanting to sell her grandmother's recipes, of feeling overwhelmed by the business world, of her desire to focus on being a good wife instead of worrying about all this money stuff. Brett ate it up, offering to help her make smart decisions about her finances. He introduced her to his business partner, suggested investment strategies, even offered to handle the sale of what he assumed were her small-scale recipe collections. Meanwhile, Maria's lawyers were busy preparing a very different kind of documentation. The third and final phase began 4 days before the wedding. Maria invited Vivienne to lunch at Esperanza, ostensibly to discuss last-minute wedding details. She chose a table in the main dining room this time, surrounded by the gentle bustle of her successful restaurant. "I wanted to thank you," Maria said over salads that cost more than most people spent on dinner, "for accepting me into your family. I know I'm not what you probably hoped for in a daughter-in-law." Vivienne waved dismissively. "Nonsense, dear. Brett is happy, and that's what matters. I just worry sometimes that I'm not sophisticated enough for him." "He's very good with money, much better than most women, I'm afraid. We're just not built for these things." Maria nodded earnestly. "That's exactly what I keep telling myself. I'm just so lucky he wants to handle all that boring financial stuff for me. I can just focus on being a good wife." "Exactly right, dear. Let the men handle the complicated things." As they finished lunch, Maria made her move. "Actually, there is one tiny thing I wanted to ask you about. Brett mentioned that he might want to make some changes to my accounts after we're married. Consolidating things, making them more efficient. I trust him completely, of course, but I wondered if you had any advice." Vivienne's eyes lit up with predatory interest. "Well, combining accounts is certainly practical. Eliminates confusion, makes everything simpler. I'm sure Brett knows exactly what's best." "Oh, I'm sure he does. I just want to make sure I understand everything before I sign the papers." "Papers? The ones his lawyer prepared? Something about transferring assets and power of attorney, very technical stuff that's way over my head." Maria watched as Vivian's expression shifted, greed and satisfaction warring with a sudden flicker of concern. Power of attorney? That seems rather comprehensive for a new marriage. Maria laughed, a tinkling sound that suggested she found the whole conversation amusing rather than alarming. I know, right? But Brett explained that it's just easier this way. Something about tax implications and estate planning. He showed me all these official-looking documents, but honestly, I just trust him to handle it. I mean, what do I know about legal stuff? The hook was set. Maria could practically see the wheels turning in Vivian's head. Even she wasn't callous enough to let her son commit what amounted to financial fraud, not when it could be traced back to the family. Just to be safe. Maria's eyes widened with apparent surprise. Do you really think so? Brett said it was just a formality. I'm sure it is, dear. But in my experience, it's always wise to have an independent professional review any significant legal documents, just to make sure everything is appropriate. The word hung in the air between them like a sword. That evening, Maria called Brett in a state of carefully manufactured distress. Darling, I had lunch with your mother today, and she said something that has me a little worried. Oh? What about those papers your lawyer prepared? The ones about my accounts? She thinks I should have my own lawyer look at them. She seemed to think they might be too comprehensive. I don't really understand what she meant, but she seemed concerned. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several heartbeats. I see, Brett said finally. Well, if it would make you feel better, of course you should have them reviewed. Though I can't imagine what concerns Mom might have had. But Maria could hear the tension in his voice, the careful control that suggested he was furious with his mother for planting seeds of doubt. I'm sure it's nothing, Maria said quickly. I mean, I trust you completely. It's just that she seems so sure I should be careful, and I don't want to do anything wrong. Of course not, sweetheart. We'll sort it all out after the wedding. There's no rush, but there was rush in his voice now, urgency and something that might have been panic. Maria smiled in the darkness of her apartment. The trap was closing. The night before the wedding, Maria sat in her office above Esperanza, surrounded by documents that told the real story of her life. Financial statements showing her true net worth, nearly $50 million across her restaurant empire, real estate investments, and carefully managed portfolios. Corporate structures that had taken years to build and protect. Legal documents that would ensure her legacy lived on long after she was gone. And one final document that would complete her revenge. Her phone rang. Brett? Maria? Thank God you answered. We need to talk. His voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Of course, darling. What's wrong? It's my mother. She's having second thoughts about the wedding. She thinks we're moving too fast, that maybe we should postpone until we've had more time to really get to know each other. Maria almost laughed. Vivian had clearly done some research of her own, probably hired her own investigator to look into Maria's background. The woman wasn't stupid. She had realized that her son was about to commit a crime that could destroy them both. Oh no, Maria breathed, but everything's ready. The church, the reception, all our guests. I know. Look, can you meet me? We need to figure this out. Of course. Where? Esperanza? I know it's late, but maybe we could sit somewhere quiet and talk through all of this. Perfect. An hour later, Maria met Brett in the private dining room where this had all begun. He looked haggard, his usual polished appearance replaced by the rumpled desperation of a man whose carefully laid plans were falling apart. Maria, I need to be honest with you about something. She sat across from him, her hands folded calmly in her lap. What is it, darling? It's about your inheritance. About the money. What about it? Brett ran his hands through his hair, destroying what was left of his careful styling. The truth is, my family has some financial problems. Serious ones. When I met you, when I learned about your grandmother's money, I thought... He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. You thought what, Brett? I thought it could solve everything. I thought if we got married, if I could help you manage your finances, maybe some of your money could help stabilize our situation. Just temporarily, you understand. Just until I could get back on my feet. Maria stared at him, letting the silence stretch until he began to squirm. I see, she said finally. So you've been lying to me this entire time? No! I mean, yes, about the money, but everything else is real. My feelings for you, the way I feel when we're together, that's all true. Is it? Yes! Maria, you have to believe me. I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to hurt you. Maria stood up slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. But you did mean to steal from me. Not steal, not borrow. I would have paid it back, I swear. Once my investments recovered, once the market turned around. With what money, Brett? Your company is 3 months away from bankruptcy. Your mother's house is mortgaged to the hilt. Your personal accounts are overdrawn. What exactly would you have used to pay me back? Brett's face went white. How do I know? Maria smiled, and for the first time all evening, it was genuine. Because I'm not the naive little waitress you think I am. She walked to the wall and flipped a switch. The lights came up, revealing that they weren't alone in the room. Maria's lawyer sat at a corner table, along with a stenographer and 2 private investigators. What is this? Brett whispered. Maria returned to the table but didn't sit down. Instead, she opened a leather portfolio and spread its contents across the white tablecloth. This is the real Maria Vasquez, she said quietly. Owner and CEO of Esperanza Restaurant Group with locations in 12 cities across 3 states. Owner of Vasquez Properties, which includes the building we're sitting in right now, and 17 others like it. Majority shareholder in 3 food distribution companies, 2 wineries, and a culinary school. Brett stared at the documents as if they were written in a foreign language. Net worth as of yesterday's closing market, $47.3 million. Not including my grandmother's inheritance, which you'll be interested to know was actually 42 million, not 22. I don't understand. Of course you don't. You never bothered to really look at me, did you? You saw what you wanted to see, a working-class girl with more money than sense. It never occurred to you to wonder why a simple waitress could afford a $12,000 bottle of wine for your mother, or why the owner of Esperanza was so eager to accommodate my special requests. Maria picked up a photograph from the table Brett and his mother at lunch 3 days ago, their heads bent together in intimate conversation. You also never considered that a successful businesswoman might have the resources to investigate the man she was planning to marry, or that she might have been recording your conversations from the very beginning. She nodded to one of the investigators, who activated a small device. Brett's voice filled the room, tinny but clear. Mom says she's already got preliminary papers drawn up. Power of attorney, joint accounts, the works. Once we're married, I'll have access to everything. Maria will never know what hit her. The blood drained from Brett's face. That conversation was recorded yesterday evening, Maria continued conversationally, along with 17 others over the past 3 weeks. Would you like to hear the one where you and your business partner discuss using my money to cover your outstanding debts? Or perhaps the one where you and your mother laugh about how easy it will be to manipulate the stupid little gold digger? Brett slumped in his chair, the fight going out of him all at once. Here's what's going to happen, Maria said, her voice still calm but now carrying an undertone of steel that Brett had never heard before. Tomorrow morning, you're going to call every single wedding guest and tell them the ceremony is canceled. You're going to explain that you've realized you're not ready for marriage, that you need time to work on yourself. Maria, please. You're going to return every gift that's already been given, and you're going to pay for any non-refundable deposits out of your own pocket. My lawyer will provide you with a list. She picked up another document from the table. You're also going to sign this non-disclosure agreement, which prevents you from discussing any aspect of our relationship, my finances, or tonight's conversation with anyone, ever. The penalty for violation is $5 million plus legal fees. $5 million? I don't have... No, you don't. Which is why you'll be very careful to keep your mouth shut. Maria sat back down, her eyes never leaving Brett's face. In return, I won't be pressing charges for attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, or any of the other felonies you and your mother have been planning. I won't ruin your business or destroy your family's reputation. I'll simply disappear from your life as if this never happened. Brett stared at her, his face cycling through expressions of shock, anger, and dawning understanding. You planned this, he whispered. All of it. The dinner with my mother, the lunches, the financial documents, you've been playing me from the beginning. Not from the beginning, Maria corrected. From the moment I overheard your mother explaining to her friend how you were only marrying me for my money. From the moment I realized that everything I thought I felt for you was based on a lie. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Did you really think I was so stupid, Brett? Did you really believe that a woman who built a multi-million-dollar empire from nothing would be fooled by a 2-bit con artist and his desperate mother? The insult hit home. Brett's face flushed with anger and humiliation. You're just as bad as we are, he snarled. All this manipulation, this elaborate revenge plot, you're no better than us. Maria smiled, and this time it was sharp enough to cut glass. You're absolutely right. I suggest you sign everything promptly and without argument. The alternative is very unpleasant. As she reached the door, Brett called after her. Maria, wait. What if I meant it? What if I really do love you? She turned back to look at him one last time. He was slumped in his chair, his expensive suit rumpled, his carefully styled hair a mess. He looked like exactly what he was, a small, desperate man who had overplayed a weak hand. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to steal from me, she said simply. Maria walked out of the restaurant into the cool night air, her heels clicking against the sidewalk with satisfying precision. Behind her, Esperanza glowed with warm light, its windows reflecting the city lights like jewels. Tomorrow there would be no wedding. There would be awkward phone calls and returned gifts and disappointed relatives. There would be gossip and speculation and probably some degree of social embarrassment. But there would also be justice. Maria Vasquez had built her life on the foundation of hard work, honesty, and respect for others. She had given Brett and his mother exactly what they deserved. Not just punishment, but a masterclass in what happened when you underestimated the wrong woman. As she walked toward her car, Maria felt something she hadn't experienced in months: peace. The betrayal still hurt, probably always would. But the sharp edge of that pain had been dulled by the satisfaction of a plan perfectly executed. Tomorrow, she would go back to running her empire. She would create new dishes, open new restaurants, mentor young chefs who shared her passion for excellence. She would honor her grandmother's memory and build something lasting and beautiful. And if she was very lucky, someday she would find someone who loved her for who she really was, not the mask she wore, not the money she had earned, but the woman who had turned heartbreak into the most elegant revenge. Until then, she had Esperanza. She had hope. And that was more than enough.